Imagine trying to provide healthcare for over 270 million people. I mean, that's a monumental task, right? Well, in Indonesia, one company has stepped up to become this massive, dominant force, touching millions of lives every single year. Today, we're going to dive into the story of Prodia, the country's biggest clinical lab network, and figure out how on earth they did it. So, what's their secret sauce? Is it just about being big? Not really. It's a fascinating mix of smart, strategic growth, some really high-tech ambition, and, get this, a 50-year obsession with quality. We're going to break down exactly how they went from this tiny little lab to a powerhouse traded on the stock exchange. All right, so first things first, let's talk scale. Just how big is Prodia? Their official name is PT Prodia Hosada, but what you really need to know is that they are, by a long shot, the biggest game in town when it comes to clinical labs in Indonesia. I mean, if you've ever had a medical test done there, the chances are pretty high that you've been through their network. So they kicked things off way back in 1973, and since then, they've built this absolutely huge network that stretches all across the country. But here's the kicker, the one thing that really sets them apart. It's this thing called CAP accreditation. That's the College of American Pathologists. It's basically the global gold standard for lab quality. And Prodia, they are the only lab in all of Indonesia that has it. That single fact tells you almost everything you need to know about their commitment to being the best. Now, a company this massive doesn't just pop up out of nowhere, right? Their history is like a textbook case of slow, steady, and super strategic expansion. So let's rewind the clock and see how their journey actually played out over the years. Okay, you can really see the patient, methodical growth right here. It all started with just one lab back in '73. By 1990, boom, they're a national player. Then in 2008, they make this super smart move to create the National Reference Lab, which basically became the central brain for all their advanced testing. But the moment that changed everything, that was 2016, when they went public and raised an insane amount of money to supercharge their growth. And this number right here, this is what changed the game. Their IPO in 2016 pulled in over 1.15 trillion rupiah. And look, that wasn't just cash to sit on. It was pure rocket fuel for a very specific and ambitious plan they had in mind. So you might be wondering, where did all that cash go? Well, you can see their strategy laid out pretty clearly. The lion's share, a massive 67%, went straight into growing their physical network. More labs, more clinics, more boots on the ground. But the really brilliant move, the one that shows you they're thinking way ahead, is that next chunk. Almost 20% was poured into next-generation diagnostic tech. They weren't just making themselves bigger, they were making themselves smarter. So who's actually running the show? Well, the original holding company still owns the majority, which is smart because it keeps the founding vision alive. But now, with a quarter of the company owned by the public, they get all the benefits of being on the stock market, like more accountability and, of course, easier access to money. It's a really strategic balancing act. Okay, so how in the world do you manage a sprawling network of over 250 labs and keep everything running smoothly? You use what's called the hub and spoke model. The easiest way to think about it is like an airline. You've got the main hub airport. For Prodia, that's their national reference lab in Jakarta. That's where all the super complex, specialized tests go. Then you have all the smaller regional airports. Those are the hundreds of local labs, the spokes. They handle the everyday, routine stuff quickly. But anything tricky or advanced, it gets sent right to the central hub. It is just an incredibly smart and efficient way to guarantee top-notch quality, no matter where you are in the country. Look, having a giant, efficient network is awesome. It's the foundation. But Prodia isn't content with just being big. They're laser-focused on being the future. And this is where the story takes a really interesting turn, where they pivot from just scaling up to specializing in something called precision medicine. So what the heck is precision medicine? In the simplest terms, think of it as healthcare made just for you. We're talking custom-tailored. Instead of the old one-size-fits-all approach to medicine, this uses your unique genetic makeup to figure out what treatments will work best and even what health risks you might face down the road. This is the absolute cutting edge of healthcare, and Prodia is betting big on it. And to make this a reality, they're pouring money into 3 key pillars. First up is something called next-generation sequencing, or NGS. This is for super detailed genetic testing. Think advanced prenatal screenings or checking for hereditary cancer risks. Second, they've built a world-class mass spectrometry lab for all sorts of complex tests. It's the only one like it in the whole country, which is a huge deal. And finally, they're making it all accessible through digital tools, like a mobile app that lets you book appointments, pay, and get your results right on your phone. And don't just take my word for it. This quote, straight from their 2023 annual report, says it all. We are focused on developing new generation diagnostic technology for precision medicine. This isn't some fluffy PR statement. This is them putting a stake in the ground, declaring that this is their core strategy for the future. They are all in. Okay, so we've seen the history, we've seen the high-tech vision, but the big question is always, does it actually work? Does it translate into real results? Well, let's take a look at the numbers. Now, the pandemic was obviously a massive global event, and it put a huge spotlight on diagnostic testing. And it turns out, Prodia was perfectly positioned for that moment. Their financial performance absolutely exploded. The jump in their net profit between 2020 and 2021 was, well, let's just say it was pretty significant. How significant? How about a 131.3% increase in a single year? That is just staggering. And it's really important to see that this wasn't just some one-off pandemic bump. It was proof that all their long-term investments in their network, their tech, and their quality paid off, creating a business that could handle immense pressure and deliver. And holding all of this together is something that might sound a little boring, but is absolutely crucial: good corporate governance. For Prodia, this isn't just some buzzword they throw around. It's about running the company the right way, transparently, ethically. It's the bedrock of their strategy for building lasting trust with everyone, from patients to big-time investors. So that brings us right back to our original question. How does one company become a healthcare leader in a country of 270 million people? Well, Prodia's story gives us a pretty clear blueprint. It's that mix of patient, methodical growth, an absolute refusal to compromise on quality, and a really bold vision for where medicine is heading. They spent decades building the network, and now they're loading it up with the tech of tomorrow. So the real question becomes, what will Prodia's next 50 years look like? It's definitely going to be personal, it's going to be precise, and it's going to be digital.